knowing that it was already paid back. 4 or 5 months trying to get the courts to stop trying to take the money that was already refunded back, and they denied to do it. The Inspector General actually had 2 meetings with the director, the friend of the court, to affirm that the money was refunded back already, that I am under an order to pay, and they still denied to stop the garnishments.
And who's this friend of the court that refused the Inspector General of the state?
It's Elizabeth Rosaticki is the director of the friend of the court here in Bay County.
Is she an evil person?
I think they've got themselves painted in such a bad corner they're afraid to make a move on anything. One of the big places where they made a mistake, even though my visitation rights were terminated to the child, my parental rights were intact. That's the only way they could have ordered child support. The biological father held no parental rights to the child, and in 2001, when they abated the child support, I actually found out a couple different things. I found a memorandum from the Friend of the Court Bureau that was directed to all Friend of the Court directors and all judges that to abate child support from one person to another, the person that it's going to has to be legally responsible to care for the children, which this man never was. It was also noted in the memorandum that Michigan law states they have to notify all legal parties to the case. They have to wait 30 days to abate the child support. I was never notified, and they did it the very next day. My ex-wife gave me a handwritten letter asking them to abate the child support to the biological father. They did it the very next day by court order.
Sounds like even perjury, lying women have all the rights, and non-dads, such as yourself, have no rights.
I've never been granted any due process or rights through this whole process.
Who's the Inspector General that told?
It was Andrew Kostowski. He's the lead Inspector General for the state of Michigan that's actually works for the Department of Health and Human Services. When he started the investigation, he went into the Friend of the Court here and pulled files, and he actually told me the files that the Friend of the Court have in their office and the files that are in the office of the Department of Health and Human Services don't even match.
So records have been doctored?
Well, it isn't even a matter, this is where part of the fraud come in. The Friend of the Court listed the child as living with the mother when in fact the child was living with the biological father.
And whose record did not reflect that?
The Friend of the Courts. The Friend of the Court were claiming that the child was living with the mother when in fact the child was living with the father.
Well, that would be a CPS worker or a Child Protection Service worker that committed that fraud.
Somebody did somewhere. A lot of files have been denied to me. When I started petitioning files, a lot of them, when they figured out what I was doing, they started denying files.
I would think you have it. These are public records, and you're the person who has the most right to know.
Correct. There was 2 courthouses here. There was an old courthouse, which they turned into the county building, and then they built a new courthouse. I started going into the old courthouse where a lot of files were left and started making copies of stuff that were in the file. And throughout this process, when the media that got involved, I could literally sit and watch papers, because I'd go back to this file getting different things because it's 4 inches thick. I could literally watch papers disappearing out of this file.
Who would have the ability to get access to those papers besides you?
Anybody. It's legitimately, if you have the case file number, you can go in and hand it to them and they'll bring you the file. You have to sit there and look at the file. You can't take the file out, and it's right in front of them.
So people could tamper with it?
Well, there was several times where I went down there to get the file, and it was pulled out of there, and they had it at the courthouse. The chief judge that placed the order in this case actually had it at the courthouse.
Who's the chief judge?
Was Kenneth Schmidt was the chief judge.
And who's the judge that did you the most evil and just refused to do the right thing?
That was Judge Penzine.
And is he still on the bench?
He's dead.
So he's dead. Died of old age, or did somebody shoot him?
Brain cancer.
Brain? Still on the bench?
He's dead.
So he's dead. Died of old age, or did somebody shoot him?
Brain cancer.
Brain cancer got him. Interesting.
Yeah. I wish he was... I'll tell you, there's days I wish I could pull him back out of the grave, bring him back to life, and kill him again. He destroyed my life. He destroyed my life.
And you can't sue his pension or anything, can you?
One problem you run into is getting an attorney to take it. That's where you really run into a problem with cases like this. There was a lot of civil rights violations in my case. They don't want to touch it. They're not going to rock the boat because, I mean, they make their living in the same courthouse. They will be blackballed. The judge actually has the discretion to ruin their career.
So how many weeks ago did this last order for your arrest for the last $300 of child support they want from you that you don't owe, when did that order come out? You just found out about it last night?
Sent the governor a letter, and she forwarded the letter to the friend of the court bureau in Lansing, and the friend of the court bureau in Lansing sent a letter to me showing what the balances are on this case. In the balances, the balance was higher than what the initial order was. When we made the agreement in 2006, there was $447 that had to go to the friend of the court for court fees and processing. And it was stipulated in the order there's no surcharges to be added to it. Well, I just got a statement from them, and that it was actually $347, and I just got a statement from them, and it's now at $410, and I've been paying on it for a year and over a year. So it actually went up instead of down. And on the bottom of it, it actually shows bench warrant charge. That's how I found out they had a warrant out for my arrest. I didn't even know. I was not notified. There was no show cause hearing, nothing.
And what was the date the last judge told you they're canceling all their rearages, all this is done with?
That was in March of 2006.
Well, that's a year and a half ago.
Correct.
Did somebody forget to process the order? Did somebody grab the order?
Well, the order was actually processed, but that was where I had to make the agreement that to pay the state of Michigan reimbursement money for the time that the mother was on welfare, which came out to be fraud.
So the state of Michigan wants you to pay for their fraud and her fraud and their cooperation aiding and abetting her in fraud.
Correct.
And they want you to pay for the fraud.
They never even prosecuted her when they verified it was fraud.
And where is she today?
She lives here in Bay County, I know that. There was somebody else I know that I just spoke with, and they contacted her and a biological father trying to get them to talk, and they wouldn't talk. It was actually Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil's producer called them trying to get them to go on the show, and they denied him. They won't have no part of it.
Is there justice in the family court system?
For the family courts in the state, there isn't for a father.
Is it all about just money for the attorneys and the state and the CPS workers?
Well, in this case, the only people that profited was the defrauder and the courts in the state of Michigan. And still to this day, I've been married with my wife now for 14 years. We've got a 3.5-year-old son. We specifically waited, partially because I didn't want to have no more kids. I was afraid of going through this again. And as time went by, I decided, you know, it's a whole different relationship. And the financial burden that it placed on me. I mean, it wasn't only, I got billed over $30,000 in health insurance deductibles that she never paid, that she was ordered to pay during a divorce. It's ruined my credit because after paying a few $1,000s in deductibles, after she didn't pay them, I denied to pay them.
So there's no justice in family court?
No, not at all.
It's all about money for the attorneys, the judges, and the divorce custody industry.
It's all about federal funding is what it's about.
It's all about the federal VAWA funding and the Title 4D funding?
That's all it's about. I actually did a FOIA on the state of Michigan on my case and the state of Michigan, and they actually honored it. They gave me a copy from 2000 to 2005 what they received in federal funding. In Bay County, it was only $1.5 million a year, but the state of Michigan was averaging $250 million a year. And it was just released not too long ago that this year alone, and they're bragging about it, that the state of Michigan has already received over $1 billion in federal funding.